Hello, I'm Tony McMahon. I'm the author of the Knights Templar History and Mystery, published by Pen and Sword. And what I wanted to talk to you about today is the books on the Knights Templar that I used as part of my research to write my own book. And the reason for that is I think it'll give you a good indication of some of the great books out there to read on the Knights Templar if you're struggling to understand this enigmatic order of holy warriors. So let me start with The Knights Templar by Helen Nicholson. Now, I had the honour to share a public stage with Helen Nicholson at the Bradford Literature Festival a few years ago. We both talked about the Knights Templar. Helen is the expert, I think, the academic expert on the Templars. She's made it her life's work. She's written an enormous amount on the Templars, very well informed, very entertaining, very factual. I would say that her main strength is the Templars in Britain, and I mean England, Wales, Scotland and Ireland. And she just gives a very straightforward, no-nonsense, factual, mainstream account of the Knights Templar. The next author would be Evelyn Lord and her book The Knights Templar in Britain. Now, if you want to understand the nitty-gritty in facts and figures, statistics about what was going on in Templar preceptories, in the commanderies around Britain, how many sheep did they have, how many cows, how many knives and forks, tables, chainmail, etc., then Evelyn Lord has crunched the numbers. She can give you all the facts and figures you need on the Templars in Britain. Piers Paul Reed gives you a kind of overview of the Knights Templar. It's a mainstream history. It tells you about the Templars from their origins through to the trials. It's a very serious history. It's on the denser side, I think, but packed with information, a lot of anecdotes, and introduces you to all the main characters in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. So I recommend it. It is if you want a more serious history read, and as I say, I think dense is a good word for it. The Templars History and Myth by Michael Haag is a lighter read, I would say. And again, it's giving you the overview of Templar history in the Middle East, in Iberia, across Europe, all the scandals, all the battles and so on. Now, the thing that Michael Haag does is he starts to introduce some of the conspiracy theories, some of the mystery, but he puts it, if you want, in a kind of cordon sanitaire, so he hives it off from the main part of the book, which is essentially mainstream history. Different approach to me. I kind of acknowledge that if you want the boundary between history and mystery is a bit more blurred than many mainstream historians would like to admit. Nevertheless, I think Michael Haag's book is a good rollicking read, very useful, for getting a quick grasp of Templar history. Now, one of the things that's very important these days is to see the Crusades through the enemy's eyes, through the eyes of the Saracens, the Arab Islamic point of view. And I think Amin Malouf's book, The Crusades Through Arab Eyes, is incredibly important. I used it a lot in my Templar history, my first book in my trilogy on the Templars. That's the Templars History and Mystery. Just to remind you, the Knights Templar History and Mystery. But his book draws on contemporary Arab Islamic chroniclers, and it's very interesting because it gives you that perspective from the other side of the divide in the Crusades. And actually, strangely, it's often quite complimentary about the Knights Templar, but it's also interesting to see what the Saracen view was of some of those key battles and the things that they thought were important. Also, how the Crusades impacted the Muslim world at that time. Not how it's been perceived since, but how it was perceived at the time in the 12th, 13th centuries. Well, of course, then we come on to the end of the Templars, their ignominious end, the trials between 1305 and 1312, when the Council of Vienne then closed down the Templars for good. The academic who really knows his stuff on the trials is Professor Malcolm Barber. I think he's without equal in terms of understanding the trials of the Knights Templar. I'll freely confess that I ploughed through his works in order to cover that part of the story. He really gives you a comprehensive understanding of the trials, the confessions, the tortures, everything that Templars went through, and even what was going on in the background during the Templar trials. So his book, called The Trial of the Templars, I just think is the account of the trials. Now, the French historian Alain Desmurger is, if you want, a complementary read to Malcolm Barber. The Persecution of the Templars gives you a kind of a more detailed French perspective on what was going on. And of course, it was France, the King of France, who led the destruction of the Templars. So I think Desmurger, who has really gone through a lot of the French documents at the local and national level, he speaks French, obviously, he's French himself, and he has a slightly different perspective on the trials to Malcolm Barber. So I think it's a good complementary read, because he doesn't always agree with what Barber thought about the trials. So those are the books that I used. I used many other books as well, of course, and I'm talking here about mainstream history of the Templars, not the conspiracy theories, although of course I've got plenty of books about that, and I talk about that in other videos and on my blog. And again, please do buy my book, The Knights Templar History and Mystery. Those were some of my research sources, but of course I did my own research, and I hope that I've also been able to provide some new insights into the Templars. Until we meet again then, non nobis domine.